There's definitely big risks for jobs, and we at IPPR actually did a report on this, and we estimated that sort of in the next 5 to 10 years, 8 million UK jobs could be at risk. All governments, I think, are not worried enough about the job impacts. Big tech firms, but also other tech firms, are better than ever in processing large amounts of data, and there's a lot of power that comes with having access to this data. So we should be super vigilant with regards to how is this being used, asking for relentless transparency on who this data is shared with, what's ultimately predicted with it, and be very harsh on demanding that sort of the agreements aren't overstepped.
Carsten Young, welcome to PoliticsJOE. How would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Carsten Young. I'm the head of AI at IPPR.
We just heard Starmer's speech today about AI and his plan to mainline it into the nation's veins, in his words. He said that artificial intelligence will deliver a decade of national renewal. Can AI really save the economy?
I think it can single-handedly save the economy. A lot of things need to come together, including things like we need to build more homes, we need to invest in technologies of the future, like to address the climate crisis and things like that. But AI can be, like, I think, a sort of a catalyst to help with a lot of those problems. I really didn't think we'd be where we are today with AI, right? If you told me 5 years ago how good it is, I would have been absolutely shocked, and I'm kind of still shocked how powerful it is, right? It's like at sort of some reasoning tasks, it's as good as some early years university students in like economics or medicine reasoning. So it's very powerful. So it can help with a lot of problems. And if it comes together with a lot of other good policy, I think it can really have a positive impact.
How long do you think it will take for us to see the benefits of unleashing AI in the way that Starmer's hoping to?
Sure. I think it's interesting, right? So we see, and everyone who plays with AI sees how good it is already. So in theory, we all see it can have a big impact now already. But in our day-to-day lives, I don't think we encounter it that much yet, right? I mean, people might have some interactions with chatbots, but it's very little. So the question is, when will it become more ubiquitous? I think it will happen sooner than other technological revolutions. If you go by past experiences, it will take about 10 years to have a really big impact. But because partly it's so easy to plug in, right? This isn't some kind of really difficult specialist tool. Anyone who's used an AI chatbot sees it just, you give him something messy and it will come up with good responses. So it's not so hard this time around to plug it into your work processes if you're a business or if you're government. There will still be challenges, but I think it'll be quicker. So I think within 2 years or so, we'll be saying, wow, okay, AI is already integrated in my online shopping websites. There's these online chatbots, or my local GP already uses AI to summarize some documents that they would have to write themselves usually. So I think in about 2 years' time, we will be like, okay, wow, this is really being used.
A lot of people are worried that AI could cost them their jobs. I mean, we saw journalists at Reach PLC being replaced with AI. And I guess to an extent, all technological shifts do lead to some job losses. But Starmer sees AI as leading to jobs in the UK. Is the government being naive when it comes to AI's impact on labour?
I think you're right. There's definitely big risks for jobs. And we at IPPR actually did a report on this. And we estimated that sort of in the next 5 to 10 years, 8 million UK jobs could be at risk. So we have 34 million jobs in total, and 8 of those could be at risk. if we just, use AI to automate people, and it can, existing AI is good enough to automate quite a lot of tasks. So that's definitely a risk. And what needs to be done is that, unions, but also government and civil society needs to say, we don't want this technology to just be used to automate jobs away and cut costs. We want this to be used in a way that makes jobs better and that perhaps allows people to spend more time on the face-to-face interaction, on the human touch. I mean, Keir Starmer did say that today, saying this is not about automating people, it's about giving doctors and teachers more time to do the actual job. I think that's the positive vision. And if we all push for this, I think it's possible. I think there'll still be disruption. So we estimated in our report that so-called back office jobs are most at risk. So personal assistants, for example, a lot of their tasks could be at risk from being automated. Maybe not all of these jobs can be saved. And so we need to think about how can we invest so people can transition into new jobs, again, that are meaningful. So we'll need quite a lot of more attention from the government to push to help people transition if their jobs get automated. So I think it's both. Yeah, it is a big risk, and we should be alert to it.
I mean, 8 million jobs. I mean, Starmer said there's only going to be thousands generated by this investment into AI. Do you think that there's enough focus on that from the government?
Like those 8 million jobs at risk, that will play out not tomorrow. And I think the government's talking a lot about, immediate jobs that could be generated from, investing in data centers that run the AI. So I think these are jobs that could come online very, very soon, whereas, a lot of the office jobs that are at risk. And by the way, we found that women are more likely to hold those kind of jobs. So there's an interesting gender story here, and we need to be alert to that. I think those risks will take a bit longer to come through, maybe more in about 5 years' time. So we have a bit of time. We shouldn't panic to think about this. But I think, yes, all governments, I think, are not worried enough about the job impacts. And we should build the monitoring institutions that really look out for what's happening in the labor market with regards to AI. We should build them now and really come up with strategies. Hopefully it won't be necessary and we'll have, enough jobs to go around, and that'd be great. But we should have in the drawer some strategies that what if this actually does hit very hard, how are we going to invest? How are we going to support people to transition into new jobs? I think that's the next step. I think the government is right to say we need to invest in AI and help it make jobs better. But kind of the next step is to be, how do we address the risks to jobs?
There's currently no general statutory regulations of AI in the UK, and the UK government's approach to AI regulation has been a pro-innovation approach, and that contrasts with the route the EU has taken, which is a more active regulatory approach which categorises AI into risk tiers. Is the divergence away from the EU the right approach for the UK?
Yeah, so that's right, that the EU has gone ahead with one of the most comprehensive schemes to address risks from AI. So making sure the models are safe and they don't discriminate, and that, like another thing it says is that you should always be able to question a decision made by an AI. And it should be able to, the company that makes a decision with the AI should be able to explain to you why the AI has made that decision. And currently, we don't have that type of regime. It's not that we in the UK don't have any regulation. That you have whatever the FCA regulates AI in finance and make sure people don't get tricked by some kind of financial scheme that's run by an AI or sort of managed by an AI bot or something. So we do have some regulation, but it's true that we don't have something as comprehensive as the EU. This is actually in train, so the government is looking or is currently developing a bill that would do this. There is this big question of like how risk averse do you want to be? Do you want to ask companies to really be really hard on their testing and transparency regime? There is some criticism by industry that that's too that is the EU approach is too restrictive, and I think the UK will be a bit more liberal when it comes to this. I actually think so. That would be my recommendation as they put this into law. I think the EU approach is actually pretty good. I think the you know, asking companies to be quite transparent about what they're doing with their algorithms, and even if that means they're not, putting models out left, right, and center as soon as they're ready, I think it's a good thing. I think AI development is so fast that a bit of slowing down and making sure things are safe, I don't think that's anti-innovation. I think that's good for trust and good for making sure things work the way we want to. So I think the EU approach, despite having some flaws, is actually a pretty good one.
Given that, and given that transparency and that sort of thing is so important, but if the UK has this more liberal approach, could it attract more investment to the UK? Could it be seen as a Brexit bonus, a Brexit benefit?
I mean, I would be surprised if the regulation makes, if the UK had a more liberal approach, if that would make a big difference in terms of how good we are on AI. The main reason why we're currently in one of the top producers of AI is talent, is some really good AI universities, a pretty good startup landscape, and today's plan by the government will do more on this and make it easier to come for AI talent to come to the UK. And I think building on that and building on strengths in AI in life sciences, which UK is also quite good. I think that is more important than regulation. And say Germany also has a really good AI ecosystem, and France as well, and they are under the EU law. That I think those, yeah, I think I wouldn't overstay the role of safety regulation. And then the other thing is sort of the hardware, right? Do you have access to the data centers you need to run AI? And again, the government has done quite a lot today. So I think the overall package that the UK has announced today is actually probably one of the leading ones in the world now, and they really show that they get it, and I think that will probably help. And that maybe we'll get to this, but I think what no country is doing at the moment is making AI really strategic and focused, and trying to steer it into the areas where it creates a lot of public value, a lot of economic value, but also solve some of the big challenges of our time, like climate, like poor health. And if the UK government did this and was very strategic about where it wants to see more AI investment, again, that could be quite a standout feature of the UK ecosystem.
You touched on regulation there, and Dr. Dominic Lees, who's an expert in AI and advises the UK Parliamentary Committee, he said our privacy and copyright laws aren't up to date with what this new technology presents. Is the UK playing catch up to AI, and will we continuously be playing catch up?
Yeah, I think um, I think on the one hand, some of the most high value data sets in the UK, and Keir Starmer talked about this today, are sort of the patient data in the NHS, some other public data sets, that are currently not public. So are sort of collected by the public sector, but aren't public. And there could be a lot of value generated of making them available. And there is it is technologically possible to use this data to improve your AI without compromising people's privacy. And I think getting that right is a really exciting possibility. It's also important to make sure that it's not just sort of big tech who have access to this and extract value from this. And in some ways, they are sort of best placed to do it because they've done for years had contracts with the public sector. And I think an interesting challenge will be how can we also help smaller AI businesses or indeed the public sector to use these big data sets so we don't have the concentration of all cool new AI products just done by big tech, but also have maybe a homegrown ecosystem that uses these data sets. So getting this right, so privacy, but also making sure the smaller players and public sector players use this AI. I think that'll be one to watch. And I think the UK again is in a pretty good place in terms of how it works with public data sets and not really an outlier in terms of copyright either. So, it's more about are we building the institutions to get the data sharing right rather than do we need to like throw out all our existing copyright regulations.
It does sound quite scary saying that these big AI companies could have access to our personal data, our NHS data, these big national data libraries. Should there be any concern, or should we just look at this as a great opportunity?
No, absolutely. We should be very critical because, again, like big tech firms, but also other tech firms are better than ever in processing large amounts of data. And there's a lot of power that comes with having access to this data. So we should be super vigilant with regards to how is this being used, asking for relentless transparency on who this data is shared with, what's ultimately predicted with it, and be very harsh on demanding that sort of the agreements aren't overstepped. So there are deals in the past, for instance, between the NHS and Palantir, that is helping the NHS. So that's a tech company from the US that's helping the NHS pool all that sort of data from different parts of the NHS. There have been criticisms that this hasn't been very transparent, and we don't know either the legal or let alone the technical ways in which privacy is ensured. And I think that's not good enough. And that's both on the NHS and the public sector that puts these things out for tender and makes these contracts, but also on the big tech firms to really show to the public exactly what's being done. So independent organizations can assess if they're good stewards of our data. And I think we should be really insistent on that and not just trust anyone. We should demand to see the exact agreements and the exact technical methods by which they preserve our data.
While we haven't got that transparency from these institutions, should we be concerned that Starmer's announcements today are putting too much power into the hands of a very small group of tech barons with their own agendas?
I think today's announcement that it's a plan that'll be filled with life over the next months, and I think today's announcements alone aren't giving away anything. I think so. It's the details that will come out over the next months. Taking the data library, so giving NHS data, making that available to AI firms. I think when that's being fleshed out, that's when we need to look. And that's when we need to ask tough questions. So it remains to be seen.
Carsten Young, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great. Thanks for having me.